we're doing a comparative anatomy on rat and snails. I'm Connie.
And I'm Kellen.
We're first going to start with the introduction, moving forward to animal backgrounds and rat anatomy, finally anatomy comparisons between rat and snail. In the introduction, we will be talking about the reason of this presentation and how do we compare the anatomy of rat and snail. The study will focus on the comparison of rat and snail. These two organisms will be compared for possible evolutionary common ancestry and lineage, and we will be using multiple methods to test this. And now we're moving on to the animal background, which will be talking about animal backgrounds of rat and snail. This is a picture of Rattus norvegicus, or known as rodent. It's a small or medium-sized rat that covered with fur and with long tails, and it also comes with whiskers. Moving on, we have the Helix asperessa, known as the garden snail. It has an exoskeleton shell and a muscular foot, 4 tentacles, antennae eyes, and mouth underneath the sensor tentacles. One thing that we didn't label on this snail is the pulmonary cavity, which is the lung, since most snails are marine and have gills. The presence of lungs in land snails could be explained by natural selection, since lung become a necessity for terrestrial life. These snails then transition from aquatic to terrestrial environment, and it needs the ability to extract oxygen from air. So over time, the snails will evolve into snails with lung and allowing to exchange gases with the air instead of water. Now we're looking at the taxonomy of the rat, starting from eukaryote, animaliate, chordata, mammaliate, rodentia, muridid, rattus, and then norvegicus. This is the taxonomy of the snail, starting from eukaryote, animaliate, molluscate, gastropoda, stylometaphora, helicid, helix, and asperessa. We're looking at the biotic factors of the rat. They are omnivores, which means they eat both plants and animal organs. They could host parasites, which cause many diseases like plague. Its most recent common ancestor is Eumerauda, and birds and other mammals often hunt rats as prey, while rats will hunt smaller animals as their prey. So it can be both predator and prey in the same ecosystem. Now we're looking at the abiotic factors of the rat. Rats can live in almost any environments on Earth, including homes, trees, fields, forests, and even undergrounds. They are found in almost everywhere. Some of the places that have not been found are extremely cold or hot areas. They prefer to be in mild temperatures. After the rat, we're looking at the biotic factors of the snails. They are herbivores that feed on plant materials. Parasites such as nematodes, fungi, and mites could affect their behavior and health. Its recent common ancestor is gastropod. Snails are prey for many birds, small mammals, and some invertebrates. As we mentioned before, some snails transition from having gills to lung. Hygrophila is a group of freshwater snails that has gill instead of lungs. To test the idea of the presence of a lung in Hygrophila, it means they had ancestors that lived on land. We can do this by looking at the fossil record to find evidence of early snails related to Hygrophila. If these fossils show features of land-dwelling creatures, like certain body shapes or shell types, it could support the idea that their ancestors lived on land before. The abiotic factors of the snail is that snails live in similar environments like the rat. They are found in parks, gardens, and many other places, and prefer to live in mild temperatures and moist environment. And they don't like direct sunlight or heavy rainfall since humidity is crucial to their survival. Now we're going back to see the behavior and reproduction of the rat. The rat will grind teeth together when relaxed, that's called bruxing, and during bruxing, its eyeballs will vibrate, which is known as boggling. The mating process starts with male sniffing genitals of female, and female will display perceptive behavior such as dancing and being in lordosis position in response to the male. The copulatory plugs were shown in female rats if impregnation is successful. Rats also have the behavior of burrowing or nesting to keep their young in protected environments, which could be explained by natural selection, because this behaviors improve the survival rate of their offspring. Rats are adapted for fast reproduction with a short gestation period of about 3 weeks. They can have multiple litters each year with several offspring each, which helps their population to grow quicker. especially in tough environments. Because they have a short lifespan, they reproduce early within just a few weeks of afterbirth, ensuring rapid population growth and survival even when resources are low or dangers are high. Finally, we're looking at the behavior and reproduction of the snail. Snails are often hidden during the day to avoid direct sunlight, and they use chemoreceptors on their tentacles to find food. When feel threatened, snails will retract tentacles and retreat the entire body to the shell as a defense mechanism. Snails are hermaphroditic animals, meaning they have both male and female reproductive organs. The mating process starts with a love dart, meaning they will stab each other with a dart that contains hormones and help sperms escape partner's copulation pouch. It will perform a mating dance to get into the position. Once the fertilization is complete, one of the partner will lay jelly-like eggs in moist location with protective mucus around snails to keep them from dying out and shield them away from the environment as a barrier against predator and infection.
And now, going to the rat anatomy, we'll be looking at our dissected rat and a couple of other photos from another group who had the different gendered rat from us. So, our first system would be the digestive system, which we have the salivary glands here near the top. They're kind of hard to see, and we luckily didn't break them. And then we have our esophagus, which is underneath our trachea, so it's not actually visible. Our stomach here with this giant bulb thing. Then we have the liver, which is this giant like black organ here. Then we have the large intestine, which was kind of deflated, but it's the giant tube kind of next to our kind of next to our small intestine. And then our pancreas, which was very hard to find. It was a small like pinkish whitish liquid, or not liquid, but like weird consistent organ, which basically produces insulin for the rat. And then we have the kidneys, which are like these two bean-shaped organs on both sides of the rat. And then here's our small intestine, which is this like small and very long windy tube compared to the large intestine. And then our sphincter, there's multiple sphincter muscles in the rat, but we chose the one near the exit. So now we're on to the nervous system, which has the spinal cord here, and the spinal cord has the spinal nerves, which cause reflexive reactions within the rat, basically the CNS, like how us humans have, and the cranial nerves within the brain. And here's a nice demonstration of our brain, which we didn't actually like break when opening the skull. And then excretory and reproductive systems, here we have the penis, which we kind of like ripped open, and the prostate would be underneath. And then we have the testes, which are connected to the epididymis is connected to, which basically like transports the sperm through the vas deferens into like the bladder area. And we have the urinary bladder, which is kind of hard to see, which would be like a small like bulb area. And then we have the scrotum, which would be like the outside where the testes are protected by, and the urethra, which was previously near everything as well. And then for our female one, we actually didn't have the female, so we don't have pictures before it was cut open, so we're assuming that its vagina was in that area. And our ovaries are like, this is kind of hard to tell, but there's small like circular organs leading from there, connected to the fallopian tube. And the uterus, which is like right inside where the vagina was, and the cervix. And then we have the ureters on, which it's kind of hard to tell from this angle, but it's like kind of near the fallopian tube area. And then we have the circulatory system, where the pulmonary system, or pulmonary circulation, deals with the gas exchange in the lungs, while the systemic circulation supplies oxygen and nutrients to the body. So basically, pulmonary circulation happens from the right atrium to the lungs, or to the right ventricle and the lungs, and then gives oxygenated blood to the left atrium, to the left ventricle, and then throughout the entire body. And then we have the arteries here, which are like the small red ones, and the veins, which are like the blue ones carrying the deoxygenated blood. And the capillaries, where the gas exchange happens between them, and then blood everywhere within the circulatory system as well. And we have all different chambers of the heart, so the right atrium, right ventricle, left atrium, and left ventricle. And now we have the respiratory system. Rats are very similar to humans in this aspect, where they have bronchi leading to the lungs. They have the nasal cavity, and the pharynx right after that within the throat, and the larynx, which is like where the voice box is, like right under the pharynx, which leads to the trachea, which is how air goes through, and then the trachea leads to the bronchi, which leads to the bronchioles, which is pretty much the same process, and then leads to the lungs, where the alveoli pretty much have the gas exchange, and their large surface area between them. And we have our diaphragm separating like the body cavities over here, and in these lungs, rats are air breathers like us, so they need that 78% nitrogen and 21% oxygen or whatever it was. Just like us, they can't live in water because that 4% oxygen isn't suitable for their survival. So that's one place you wouldn't find rats, I guess, besides either really hot, really cold, or really unsuitable environments. And for the rat's locomotion system, they have an axial and appendicular skeleton, so their axial would be like down their spinal cord, their head, and their appendicular would be like their little feet and everything basically that isn't down the straight shot line of its body. And how they move would be from the peripheral nervous system sending stimuluses to the central nervous system, and that integrates it and sends a signal back, moving their peripheral nervous system. And they have the smooth muscle, they have cardiac muscle, smooth muscle within their like intestines, which they don't control, but it happens, and their cardiac muscle within their hearts. And then they have skeletal muscle to move or to like strengthen their muscles in like their legs and arms, just like us humans. And they have joints, ligaments, tendons, cartilage, everything that we have as well, to help them move as effectively as us humans do. And in the anatomy comparison for rats and snails, they basically evolved from the same common ancestor, and their anatomical structure differences are rats being chordates, they have a backbone endoskeleton, while snails are mollusks, they don't have that vertebrate backbone, and they have a shell instead and an exoskeleton. And snails have one muscular foot, rats move on 4 feet, rats are bilateral throughout their entire life, and snails are bilateral only in the beginning and then become asymmetrical after their early life. Rats have a colon that houses their internal organs. Snails actually have a visceral mass, which is a different like body cavity that houses all their organs. And snails have an open circulatory system. Rats have a closed circulatory system with 4 chambers like us humans. Snails' open one only has a 2-chamber heart. And then snails' blood is hemolymph, which is different from ours. Hemoglobin, which is red. Snails' hemolymph is blue, and their hemolymph flows freely around their organs in a hemocoil. Rats, since they're like us with hemoglobin, they have red blood, and it goes through their 4 chambers of the heart and the circulatory system, and it goes through like all the blood vessels that we have as well. Anatomical structure similarities: they both are bilateral when young, but then snails become asymmetrical as they go through torsion, which is basically like the twisting of their body. Both are part of the eukaryotic domain and the animal kingdom, and this is pretty much all their similarities, as they have diverged a very long time ago. But they all have the nervous system, the circulatory system, and the digestive system in common, but pretty much nothing else. Maybe besides both of them being able to live in land environments. So in conclusion, although Rattus norvegicus and Helix aspersa have many different aspects, they evolved from a common ancestor 500 million years ago, which was a simple bilaterian organism. The ancestor they had very basic common characteristics, so that's why rats and snails don't share many characteristics at all, and the ones they do share are very common between all animals. And the comparative study between them kind of highlighted that rats are very complex animals, which are near complexity towards human levels more than they are towards the snail level, which is a much more simpler organism. And they both diverged a very long time ago, 500 million years ago to be exact. And while rats are highly specialized vertebrates with specialized systems, snails are a much more simpler invertebrate type of animal, and both came from a similar starting point but diverged very differently. And this is our presentation, and here's our references. Thank you.